Hello, and welcome to this genobank.io technology preview. Today, we're going to look at how genobank.io can help prevent improper use of biosamples, how to manage consent documentation, and how to use blockchain to track these permissions. First, let's look at the problem today from the donor's perspective. This is a donor who's collecting a biosample for ancestry research or COVID-19 testing. This could be a saliva sample or a blood sample or another type of biosample. This donor's collected the sample and she's sharing it with her healthcare provider. At this point, she's out of the picture. This healthcare provider will be submitting this sample to a lab. This is a lab that this provider works with. This is a ingress for all of their biosamples. And this lab is sending it to a specialized lab for this, whatever this type of sample, whatever testing is being done right now. And this laboratory is owned by a larger laboratory. And this laboratory just got purchased. And maybe that merged. Anybody who's done any banking in the past 10 years probably knows how that feels. And as this is getting merged and data keeps moving, this biosample that the original donor sent did not expect that this would be moving in so many different places. And as this data is shared and shared, it becomes a target because just like the small banks got bought by the bigger banks, the smaller laboratories are getting bought by the bigger laboratories, and all of these samples and data are being collected together. And as they're a target, one of them will get hacked. Hopefully you're not one of those people who's having your data stolen. And otherwise, there's another target. When all this blood and DNA is collected and it's all together, it becomes a target for law enforcement. So here's a law enforcement officer who is investigating a murder. And they're demanding data from someone who shouldn't even have your blood sample, but does. And so they've demanded it. And it actually turns out that your third cousin hugged the murder victim, and the police have no other leads. So the end result is you go to prison. This is how DNA testing works. Law enforcement that doesn't have the donors did not expect this is where their data is going. And law enforcement's getting it, and people are going to jail. And hopefully you will get let out. But who knows? Let's look at this problem from a different perspective. Here's a researcher. This doctor is working on kidney disease research. And she is looking at a couple different samples of blood samples, and this is a cohort that she's researching. And she's published a paper, and hopefully this will help with kidney disease. After she published, the bioethics committee has taken another look at her paper, and maybe it's a different peer review is happening after the fact because somebody is citing her document, her publication, and they're going through the records, and they're having trouble finding the consent for these biosamples that were collected. And there's different types of consent. So there's different forms because the samples came from different places, maybe across different geographies and different collection sites. And maybe some of them have good documentation and some of them can't be found at all. And maybe that same good documentation has conflicting documentation that's bad. End result, this paper gets rescinded and the doctor has her PhD revoked. This is a terrible outcome, and we hope to solve this by having better documentation for these consent forms. And not just better documentation, but verifiable documentation. Let's look at the genobank.io solution. Here's genobank.io for donors. Here's a donor, and she is preparing to provide a biosample. So she goes to the store and she purchases a kit, whether it's a family kit for ancestry or maybe it's something the healthcare provided to her directly. Either way, first thing she will do is she will scan this because every one of these collection containers will have a QR code that's unique. So any normal phone will do, just a normal QR scan, and this loads this container, the container's QR code directly onto the phone. And it's not anywhere else. So there's only one of them. She provides the sample, so she provides the saliva or blood or whatever. And there's no email, there's no phone, there's nothing at all of hers attached, but she has complete control over this sample. The sample is registered onto the genobank.io website. We don't know whose it is, but we do know that it was registered before the sample was provided. And oh look, the donor is able to do something with the sample. So she's been invited to share this with a study for kidney disease. And she can accept this or deny it, or learn more about this anticipated use of her sample. Same thing, genobank.io from the perspective of a researcher. So this doctor has a slightly different experience. From the beginning, every researcher and laboratory will need to register on the genobank.io website. Genobank.io is responsible to confirm the identity of these researchers and to monitor business practices, which includes tracking consent of biosamples that are used. Oh, look, this researcher also gets a pop-up, and they're being notified that a donor would like to join their research study and provide samples to them. And again, they do not know who the donor is, but they can confirm that the consent has been properly managed through the genobank.io website. So overall, genobank.io is based on blockchain technology. It's very simple. So it's based on non-fungible tokens, which are individual tokens that can be created by all the participants here. And the donor on the blockchain is just simply their anonymous identity. So they have control over these samples, but their name and email or any identifying information is not provided. The tokens on genobank.io each represent a permission. Here's a permission where the donor is authorizing the use of one of their biosamples to this healthcare provider. And this healthcare provider is sending it to a laboratory. The laboratory can confirm that it was sent by the healthcare provider and then it was originally authorized by the donor for this purpose. Likewise, a donor can disallow or deny access to their biosample by creating a deny token. All of these tokens are entirely public and auditable by everybody, whether you are a researcher, genobank.io, the company, or a member of the public. So this deny token is very clear, and it prevents the healthcare provider above from sharing this information with that researcher. End result, everybody's happy. The donor has full visibility because everybody who's using her biosample has to be registered. Nobody's able to receive these tokens until they're registered on genobank.io, which includes them verifying the identity and business practices and monitoring the business practices. The researcher, the healthcare provider on the top is happy, and the laboratory are happy because they've reduced their risk and they've easily managed the consent forms for this biosample. Likewise, the researcher on the bottom there in the green is happy because she has successfully avoided using a biosample that she does not yet have permission to use. Next, let's look at the business case that runs a company. Business case is very simple. First, all of the biosample containers have a unique QR code. These QR codes are provided under license through genobank.io. This is a form of revenue as these sample containers are going out. Likewise, all of the researchers and laboratories that are accessing any data must also register onto the website. This has a fee as well. There's a network effect here. Every researcher the researchers will be using data from this system, and maybe they've got other legacy systems. But as the researchers recognize that the consent management is simpler with genobank.io, they will be encouraging other donors to provide their samples on these QR-coded sample containers. So this allows the researchers to help us grow and get more sample containers and sell the licenses for these QR codes. Likewise, every one of these QR-coded sample containers can only be used by other researchers that are on the database on the genobank.io website. Therefore, this provides an incentive to bring more researchers on. And that's it. So thank you for joining this technology preview. This video should be on video sharing websites, so you can leave comments on the bottom, and we'll get back to you.